The Familiarity Trap. Why people choose what they know over what they need. In Mr. Stick's framework, Finance Psychology, human beings are strange creatures. Give someone a path that clearly leads somewhere better, and many will still choose the path they already know. Not because it is superior, not because it works, because it is familiar. And familiarity has a power that most people underestimate. The comfort of the known. The mind prefers certainty, even when certainty is producing poor results. People often choose a familiar struggle over an unfamiliar opportunity. Think about that. Someone can be unhappy, frustrated, stressed, stuck, and still refuse change. Why? Because at least they understand the rules of their current situation. The unknown feels more dangerous than the known, even when the known is slowly hurting them. The invisible agreement. Most people have an unspoken agreement with their current life. It sounds something like, I don't love this, but at least I know what to expect. That agreement becomes a prison, not because the walls are strong, because they become invisible. Eventually, people stop seeing alternatives. They stop questioning assumptions. They stop imagining different outcomes. Not because possibilities disappeared, because familiarity became stronger than curiosity. The familiarity bias. Psychologists have observed something interesting. People tend to trust what they recognize, not necessarily what is true, not necessarily what is effective, simply what feels familiar. This creates a dangerous pattern. People reject better habits, better ideas, better opportunities, simply because they feel foreign. Meanwhile, they continue repeating behaviors that clearly are not working, because those behaviors feel comfortable. The relationship between familiarity and identity. Familiarity does not just affect behavior, it affects identity. People become attached to familiar versions of themselves. The familiar spender, the familiar procrastinator, the familiar victim, the familiar drifter, even when these identities produce suffering. Because changing identity requires uncertainty, and uncertainty requires courage. The financial version. This shows up financially all the time. People remain in the same patterns for years, not because they lack information, because new behavior feels unfamiliar. Investing feels unfamiliar. Planning feels unfamiliar. Discipline feels unfamiliar. Long-term thinking feels unfamiliar. So they return to what they know. Spend, react, repeat. The behavior may be ineffective, but it feels comfortable, and comfort often wins. The hidden cost. The cost of familiarity is rarely immediate. That is why it survives so long. The damage accumulates quietly. Years pass. Opportunities disappear. Potential remains unused. Growth is postponed, not because someone made one terrible decision, because they repeatedly chose familiarity over development. The myth of readiness. Many people believe they will change once they feel ready, but readiness is often an illusion. Most meaningful growth happens before confidence arrives, before certainty appears, before comfort returns. Waiting to feel ready often means waiting forever. The expansion principle. Growth requires expansion. Expansion requires discomfort. Discomfort requires unfamiliarity. There is no way around this sequence. Every meaningful improvement begins by feeling awkward. The new habit feels awkward. The new environment feels awkward. The new discipline feels awkward. That is not evidence that something is wrong. It is evidence that something is changing. The strange moment of growth. Eventually something interesting happens. What was once unfamiliar becomes familiar. The disciplined person no longer struggles with discipline. The builder no longer struggles with consistency. The investor no longer struggles with patience. Why? Because repetition rewrites familiarity. The thing that once felt foreign eventually becomes normal. And that is how lives change. The question most people avoid. Here is a question worth asking honestly. How much of your life is being determined by what is best? And how much is being determined by what is familiar? That question alone exposes a surprising amount. Because many people are not trapped by lack of opportunity. They are trapped by attachment to familiarity. Final words from Mr. Sticks. Most people assume danger looks dramatic. It usually doesn't. Sometimes danger looks like routine. Sometimes danger looks like comfort. Sometimes danger looks like doing exactly what you've always done. So here's your directive. Stop asking whether something feels familiar. Start asking whether it is moving you toward the life you actually want. Because familiarity can preserve your current reality indefinitely. But growth begins the moment you become willing to step beyond it. If this framework made you recognize a few familiar patterns in your own life, don't ignore them. Awareness is often the first sign that change is already beginning. More frameworks are coming, each designed to help you see the invisible forces shaping your decisions. Stay curious. Shalom.